talked a lot about the top 3 quarterback prospects in this draft class, but the talent certainly doesn't stop there, okay? J.J. McCarthy expected to be drafted in the first round after leading Michigan to a national championship last season. Positive reports from him in meetings this week. The opposing quarterback in that championship game was Washington's Michael Penix Jr., who led the FBS with more than 4,900 passing yards last season. But of course, the story about Penix is an inspiring one. He dealt with 2 ACL tears, had to come back from that, overcome so much to get back on the field and lead his team to that college football playoff national championship. He's an incredible story and incredible player, but, you know, as the NFL is wont to do, they will look into that medical history, something that is actually happening here at the NFL Scouting Combine, and it's a big key that happens at the Combine, where medical history for the guys who are participating can be revealed to these teams. As Kimberly Martin joins us here from the Combine. Kimberly, any sense on how Penix's medical history may affect the way that some of these teams look at him?
Laura, that's everything, because as you guys have discussed, we know that arm is special. But I talked to one NFL exec in particular, and I said, how big of a concern is his injury history? And he wrote back one word: significant. And it's not just the amount of injuries, it's the type of injuries, including 2 ACL tears. But here's what I can tell you about Michael Penix Jr. Whoever gets him is getting a confident player who knows the type of player he is. I talked to someone who's close in his circle, familiar with the way he's thinking, and Saturday is just another day for Penix Jr. He's going out there, throwing the football. He's going to throw the football like he's always done. And he feels like, yes, I've had some early adversity, but that will make me better at the next level. And if you look at all those injuries, Laura, this is how he feels. After each of those injuries, I've come back better.
Yeah, that's well said, Kimberly, and he's never shied away from a challenge. It'll be fun to see him throw on Saturday. We won't see Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels, but get to see Michael Penix and some of these other prospects. Field, how do you think teams are going to go about assessing Penix's injury history, which, however you feel about him, it is a long one?
It's influential. That much is for sure, Laura. I'll start here. Speaking with someone close to Michael recently, I know that he has been in touch with Dr. Neil Elitrosh, one of the more noted NFL doctors across the entire landscape, and that the reviews of his knee were particularly positive. That being said, every team doctor is going to have access to Michael Penix Jr.'s medical files at the conclusion of this week here in Indianapolis. And here's the truth. Not all 32 medical staffs are created equally. There are some teams who are far more risk-averse than others, and there are some teams that feel as though, you know something, we're willing to give this guy a chance because the talent is significant enough. Here's the fundamental question, though, that's been posed to me by scouts who are not doctors. But they said this is the question that our doctors are then asking us. If this guy has already suffered a torn ACL on the same knee, and we don't want this to happen to any player, if it happens to that exact same knee, we're concerned about what that third torn ACL could mean for him, as opposed to a player who has never torn his ACL, because as we know now, recovering from a torn ACL is doable. This is simply a matter of multiple injuries. 4 separate seasons in which Michael Penix Jr. ended up on the college football equivalent of injured reserve.
Yeah. 0 questions about Michael's arm, which I'm very excited. Yeah, he's got a real opportunity to put on a show, because that guy throws go balls that are basically handoffs. But I do have questions about the lower half, the move, not just the potential to re-aggravate the injury, which is, I think, really significant, but also his movement abilities generally. Look, he's not a dual threat quarterback, but he can move. He has what I would describe as functional mobility. Little pocket movements. You certainly saw that in display versus Texas, and we were just raving about one of their defensive linemen. Michael Penix Jr., the way he was moving in that game, sidestepping pressure, stepping up in the pocket, throwing over the middle of the field, was really special. But it wasn't always there, as somebody who's watching every single one of his starts. There have been games where you saw, I think, that mobility wax and wane. And if I were thinking about him for my team, that would be my number one question about him. Not what can he do with his arm, but what can he do with his legs.
Yeah, it's about his availability, long-term availability, durability, and what price are you willing to pay in order to accept the risk that is going to come with him because of the fact that you've had 2 shoulder injuries and 2 ACL tears. That's really what the draft is. It's about managing risk all the time and trying to put a value on someone like this. The question isn't whether or not Michael Penix can play and whether or not he can attack all 3 levels of the field, attack the field horizontally. Great leader. Down at the Senior Bowl, he was one of those guys who people gravitated towards. He picked up the offense quick. He was efficient in third down in the red areas with new people. All that stuff is cool, but it's about going forward. So now you start to wonder, with all these injuries, how much practice time he's going to miss. How much are you going to have to manage him on a pitch count as far as throwing the football? How much are you going to have to manage him in two-a-days? How much are you going to have to rest him simply because of the fact that he suffered 2 injuries? And now let's just say he gets hit on that same knee, and then you have to kind of like set him out practice, be real careful with him. You don't want to have to deal with that. Some teams aren't going to want to deal with that at too high of a cost. So that's where I think the question becomes, where do you pick a guy like this who's so talented but comes with so much risk?
Yeah, Field, I'll throw that to you. Yeah. He's in that second tier of quarterbacks. We talked about J.J. McCarthy potentially being in the first round. You're hearing a lot of buzz around that. Where do you slot a Michael Penix Jr. in this draft?
As we know, the possibility of a trade back up into the first round for teams that are currently scheduled to pick, let's call it 35 to 40 range, is always possible. I think, though, when push comes to shove, because of the medical concerns, I would not be surprised if Michael Penix Jr. ends up going in the second round. Lewis just laid out some of the medical things that are just pertinent to teams' minds and evaluations. The bottom line is this, that you know a guy is good when you've seen these throws before and then you see them again and you say, holy cow, like, where did that one come from? The arm talent is ridiculous. He could put on a show this upcoming week here in Indianapolis. He's not the only one that has these medical concerns. There are all kinds of players this week who are going to be very closely monitored. But given the stature, the quarterback position, certainly there's no player that we are more closely paying attention to on the medical front than Michael.
I would just sum it up by saying this. You know what? You like so many of these players out here. It's just a matter of what price are you willing to pay.
Right.
That's what it is. And with Michael, this is not in any way about his ability. It's just about what cost does it come?
Well,
what cost does it come?
I think the interesting thing for some of these teams to deal with is we've seen the tape, as you're referencing, but what he's going to do here is going to be great, too. So that's going to be fresh in people's minds and may end up vaulting him up a little bit. We'll have to see. Yeah.